I don't need to enumerate all the wonderful ways that women, we give birth. So that would be resilience in the face of physical adversity. You have resilience in emotional adversity. There are so many Me Too's. And there are so many women who've, just going to my experience, who've been punished for their gender, for being born this way. And the thing is, India and the theme of resilience and the theme of India rising, I would love it to be a test model for all other countries where you are inclusive, where everything, you understand the adversity that someone besides you faces. It's our neighbor, it's our sister, it's our friend, it's our daughter, it's everything, but it's the only way that these countries will rise. And if you look at, in a house, say, there's a woman running a family, well, would it not follow that she would also be effective in government? Would it not also follow that she would be effective in running a boardroom? Would it not follow? It's just that the exclusionary practices, you have to just look at people for their skill sets. And I don't think it's an accident that it's women. I try personally not to see myself through a gender lens that much, but the world focuses on that. And I've been through 20 years of playing with the big boys, and they don't play nice. And for me to affect cultural change, which is what I've wanted for the last 20 years, I had to work very, very hard to stay alive long enough to get there, and to stay with a platform to get there, and to go around the system sideways. And my thing is, if the system isn't working, which it clearly isn't for so many, go around it. Look for ways. We all know the rules. But I think the system doesn't actually exist. It's not real. Unless you're actually behind physical bars, you're free. You're free to think. Your life can look exactly the same on the outside, but from the inside, you can have a completely different mindset, a completely different life, and a completely different freedom just by simply reframing and thinking differently. And part of that is, yes, what are you going to do when you're down? What are you going to do when you're down on the floor? If you have to rise, and so many of us have had to rise, well, let's rise higher than we ever have. Let's go for it. Let's go for the very top level of change, because, playing small doesn't really suit anybody.
Yeah. I think the challenge that we all have is when our only interaction with people in crisis is via news channels and TV screens, it gives you a very warped image and idea of what is happening in that country. Because you're absolutely right. There is death and devastation and destruction and all of these things. And I have seen the absolute worst of humanity throughout this war. But I've also seen some of the best. I've seen people who have time and time again rebuilt their destroyed hospitals, dusted themselves off, and started again. One of our partners with Can Do is the IDA. Last year, exactly a year ago, their children's hospital was bombed for the 6th time. I shouldn't be saying these words. A children's hospital was bombed. And so, like you said, a lot of the time, the impact of war is actually on women and on children, and the most vulnerable of society. So let's not just make it about women, because sometimes it is the unaccompanied male minors who are the biggest sufferers. So it very much depends. But their hospital had been bombed for 6 times, and we helped them to build it a 7th time. Imagine that resilience. Imagine the courage to know that you are a target, your hospital is a target, you as a medic are a target, and still having the audacity, the courage to say, I'm going to carry on saving lives. I'm going to fight war criminals and see their hatred with love, and we will not be stopped from doing our life-saving work. So it undoubtedly affects the most vulnerable.
So there are several factors that get in the way. There are the obvious ones like poverty. There is child marriage is a huge one. There's cultural norms. There's the issue of safety. And when I say these things, I imagine a lot of people in this room are like, yep, I understand. Yep, I get it. Some of the things we need to do is break down those cultural barriers. I'm going to give you one example of how we do that, and I'm also going to give you an example of why I think it's important that individuals are empowered to make the change, that it's not just up to government. If Malala was standing here or sitting here, she'd say to you, She can go into her work and talk to the prime ministers and presidents of other countries and get them to understand why they should invest in education. But it's the work at the grassroots level. Well, that's exactly what you were saying, get people at the ground. It's the work at the grassroots level. We have an organization, part of our organization is called the Gul Mackay Network. Gul Mackay, for those of you who are familiar with Malala's story, was the pen name that she used when she was blogging for the BBC. She took that name, and now we invest in these champions around the world who are looking at very specific things that can be done on the ground. For example, one of the barriers for girls going to school is the issue of safety. Another, cultural, is that parents don't want their girls to be taught by male teachers. Now, there's a fix in that. In some cases, safety means safe transportation. So when you're walking to school, you're not attacked. Teachers. In Afghanistan, there's one of our Gul Mackay network champions who has decided that the work that he will do will be to train more female teachers. Now you're changing what's going on in the ground. With more female teachers, more kids are going to school. With more girls going to school, they'll become teachers, and so forth and so on. So for us, it's really understanding what are the local challenges that get in the way of 130 million girls going to school. Sometimes it's budget, sometimes it's not. And drilling down to those very factors. I will say that we all, and I hope that everyone will understand the responsibility that they have, we all have a responsibility in terms of girls going to school. Whether you have a daughter or not, it's irrelevant. If you want your country to be strong, if you want your economy to be strong, if you want to have safe and secure societies, if you want government to reflect the population, it's incumbent on all of us to create opportunities for girls, whether that's going to school, whether that's in your companies in terms of elevating people, whether it's in your not-for-profits for giving opportunity. And I'm going to leave media to the last because the media have such an important role to play in the way that women are portrayed, in the voice that they are given, in the way that they have an opportunity to get into issues that are not just female or gender issues. Think about strong women in the world now who are heads of state or people like Christine Lagarde. We want more of those people. And for me, empowering a woman does not mean disempowering a man. It is not a zero-sum game. And I think that's the mind shift we need to adopt, each and every one of us.